Hello YouTube, Dave here again. A few years ago, pre-pandemic, when I was much more involved with maintaining this channel's Facebook page, which is in reality all but abandoned as I'm kind of leaving more and more social media things. But one of the things I was doing sort of before all that took place that I was really enjoying working on was creating a series of short little adventures that were like one or two encounters or like very short types of scenarios. They were inspired largely by some of the earliest dungeon magazines that I was purchasing at the time during the 3.0 era. And they had adventure types called side treks. And side treks were sort of meant to be relatively generic and something that you could easily just drop into an existing campaign if there was a bit of a gap in your story or just the players kind of need a break from whatever is going on to try something a little bit different. And I had a blast working on those types of things, and I kind of want to start getting back into it. And I thought it'd be fun to do some of the work on camera. So eventually, the scenario that we're creating here today, I will type up in like actual uh, detail with like area descriptions and like the monster, like try to design it similar to the way that a modern like 5th edition adventure book would have like the formatting and everything like that. So yeah, so today we are going to create one of these scenarios. I'm going to take you through the process that I would use for these. The first is we're going to be using stats straight from monster books. We're not going to be creating custom NPCs or anything along those lines. One of the design goals that I had with these short adventures, which I was at the time referring to as bounty hunts, was instead of side treks, just to put my own spin on it, was that I wanted to show what you could do, the types of scenarios you could create, the type of adventures, or even just like some really just hopefully interesting encounters that you could create using just the books available without having to modify or customize anything. Like just be able to pull monsters straight from the books and that be your adventure. For these scenarios in the write-ups, I do use one of the maps from the combat book that I have here. This was sent to me by, I think it was what, PW Works or P-Work War Games. This was actually a while ago that they sent this to me, and I use this thing all the time. I did do a video going through it, and we're going to look through some of the maps here because, like I said, I like to use the maps in the book. And I've got some miniatures I'm going to sort of lay out. I want to be able to essentially populate the map with the encounters where they're designed to take place, or where they take place, depending on how the characters proceed through the location. Now, again, one of the design elements or goals for this is to make it as generic as possible, so it's easier for game masters to just be able to take this and drop it directly into their ongoing campaigns. So it's going to be very light on specific details. Things like village and settlement names are not going to be provided here. If an NPC is involved in any way, shape, or form, then they're not going to be named either, just because, again, it'd be easier for you, the game master, the dungeon master, to sort of customize them to fit your campaign. And the actual motivation for the players even partaking in this is not going to be specifically defined, but I will usually provide examples. And one of the things that I actually want to use are some of my favorite D&D like monstrous humanoids that don't tend to get a lot of use. They get some, but they don't tend to get like a ton of use. And we're going to be taking a look at using some gnolls today because I absolutely love gnolls, and yeah, that's what we're going to work with. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm just going to make some bullet points here as to what sort of the possible reasons, the plot hooks, if you will, that the players might use to as their motivation for the adventure. I'm going to write down the list of like the number of enemies that are going to be involved, and basically that's it for that, and then I will sort of populate them on the map that we'll choose. So we're actually going to set this book aside for now, and we're going to see some really crappy handwriting as I stretch across the camera to try to fill this in, and I'm just using pencil, so hopefully it'll show up. If not, I can always just show it a little bit closer here on camera. So the first thing that we're going to have is, this is going to be versus, and immediately break my pencil lead. That's a great start. So versus a gnoll a Gnoll Warband. So that's what we're kind of going with here. This is going to be a small one, and the plot hooks. So there's going to be a couple different ones. The main one is that the Gnolls raided a nearby settlement. Stealing valuables. And possibly taken. Gotta love mechanical pencils. Possibly taken citizens as prisoners or food. So that's one of them. That's probably the main one that most people would probably end up using. So another hook could be harassing traveling merchants. And the merchants pay the PCs to eliminate them. Okay, so we got a couple of different plot hooks that we can use there, and we can expand on each of these. So, for example, if they attack a nearby settlement, and they, again, I'll just show you my really crappy handwriting. My handwriting sucks to begin with, but when I'm extending my arm full length, it's even worse. But if it's the one where the Gnolls attacked a nearby settlement and they stole something valuable, so you could have a situation where the townsfolk basically pool some resources together and try to hire the PCs to go and retrieve their items, in which case I will include a list of items that would be that the people would want back. Things that can be easily identified as belonging to somebody, for example, like an heirloom, like maybe a gold or silver like candle holder, or like silverware, or like jewelry or things like that that could be easily identified, that the players would be tasked with returning to the townsfolk. As well, or if it's the fact that they've captured people from the settlement, so town, village, whatever it might be. Probably not a city. I don't think an old warband would attack a city, but what if they've taken prisoners, for example, then the prisoners could be a relative of one of the player characters. It could be somebody that's important to the town, that the town, like whoever's left of the town, would want back. Just a few different things for that. And again, if they're harassing travelers, the same thing could happen. They could take one of the merchants that they attacked. Instead of just taking their goods, they could also capture some of the merchants. And again, the merchant could be someone that the PCs have had dealings with, or it might be somebody they're trying to get information from, and they need to make sure that they get this person alive. Because they need sort of the information for it. So that's the plot hooks, and I'll expand upon those when I write up the actual scenario. But now we're going to take a look at the enemies and the level range. So with 5th edition D&D, the challenge rating system doesn't work very well. And this is something I've talked about on a number of occasions. Just the amount of damage that the players can do, with the amount of healing that the players have access to. For example, just a short rest, they can spend hit dice to regain hit points and stuff like that. So the players have a lot of resources available to them, and even things like you don't have to worry as much about spellcasters going through their spell repertoire, because of their at will or their cantrips, or I think they're called cantrips for 5th edition, even like priest characters like clerics or druids. I think they used to be called orisons or something like that in older editions. But anyway, because of the at will abilities, the spellcasters will always have a pretty decent attack spell available to them. Like even something like a 0 level spell can do like a D6, 8, or I think even like a D10 for the it's not Scorching Burst, but the fire one that they have. So the characters are always going to have pretty decent abilities available to them. So, and again, with the way that challenge ratings are done in 5th edition, truthfully, I want these to be challenging. I don't want these to be sort of like a cakewalk for the players. I don't want every encounter to be like overwhelming, but I do want the finale of the scenario to feel like sort of like a monumental thing that had taken place. I want there to be a sense of satisfaction and an encounter where the characters either have to be resourceful and try to use like tactics rather than just charging head on, or even a situation where the player characters a few of them might get knocked into having to roll death saves, using up some healing resources, things along those lines, just to keep the encounter like suspenseful, I guess is the word that I'm going for. So the level range for this is going to be probably, I would say, 3rd or 4th level. And truthfully, level 4 is probably the one that I would recommend for this, because we are going to be using some decently powerful enemies. So we're taking a look at the miniatures that we're going to use, and we don't necessarily use every single gnoll, but we probably will. Because the standard gnolls are fairly, they're meaty in terms of like the amount of damage that they can take for what their challenge rating is. But still, like there's going to be we're going to be mainly using those. But we got a pair of hyenas, and with those hyenas, we are probably going to have this guy that is going to represent one of the, I think it's called like a pack lord or something like that. And then we've got our generic gnolls, which they don't stand up particularly well because the D&D Minis line back in the day used these really bendy plastics, and a lot of them would be in the box. They'd be like almost leaning over to the side. But we got 1, 2, 3. So we have 4 of these regular gnolls, which we'll be using. We've also got some other gnolls that are somewhat, I'm not going to say like overly generic, but they are ones that could also simply be like standard encounter gnolls. And then we've got this guy here. This one, I love this one. So we'll try to do something with that. And I'm going to save the last 2, perhaps, just for a little surprise at the for the final encounter. So we're going to take a look at our monster manual now, and we're going to see what we've got for our gnoll entry. And again, the purpose of this is not to be like a lengthy, adventure or anything like that. It's meant to be like a sidetrack. It's meant to be a one-shot. It's meant to be something that, is only going to take a couple of hours sort of to go through. So this is something that you could even run at your local game store if you had an event or something along those lines that you wanted to have something that's sort of quick and easy, but hopefully it will still be fun here. So let's find our gnolls, which one we went past. Okay, so we got our standard gnoll, and the only thing is that I might change their weaponry based off of what we sort of have here for the minis. So I might give them like battle axes instead of like spears. One of them I'll probably give a shield, and that I might make that one. Redo that. So we're going to put this guy with the hyenas, and that guy will be a Fang of Yeenoghu, which is challenge rating 4, so this will be sort of like a sub-boss type of thing. And then we've got the Pack Lord, and again, I'll just change sort of the weaponry for it to have it sort of more closely match the minis that we're going to be using. But yeah, overall, pretty happy with a lot of what we have here. So we'll have some regular gnolls that will have the shields and battle axes, and then we'll have some gnolls that just use the battle axes, or they might just have the shields too. That just the minis won't represent that, but that's fine. So we'll take a look at our numbers here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 regular gnolls. So we're just going to go 7 gnolls, 2 hyenas, a pack lord, and a fang. And I'm just going to write down fang because I don't want to write down Yeenoghu here. All right, so we've got sort of the basic encounters here, and we've got our major boss encounter. Okay, so we're going to be breaking these down some to make them, again, we want the scenario itself to overall be challenging, but we don't want to burden the PCs too much early on, because the final of the boss encounter is going to be a very high challenge for them. So we'll even consider this to be a deadly challenge. And then the Pack Lord with the hyenas will be a difficult. And then we've got our Fang along with 7 other gnolls. So for our encounter groups, we'll do 2 sets of 3. And 1 gnoll, 1 extra gnoll can be with the fang. Okay, perfect. And then we got our boss encounter. So for our fang, we'll just set these 2 minis aside, and then we'll have just our set of 3 regular gnolls. Oh, I think I miscounted, because we got 3 regular gnolls. Okay, so I think I did miscount, didn't I? So that's 6, 7, we had 8. Sorry, we had 8 gnolls. So then we'll have 2 gnolls with the fang. Okay. So the 2 gnolls with the fang will be the difficult encounter. Because hyenas, I don't think hyenas are overly tough, and the Pack Lord is still a challenge rating 2. So we'll just set these ones aside. We'll set these guys aside. So we have our encounters sort of set up. And we'll take a look at some other stats here momentarily. And like I said, the main goal is just to give the players something to to battle a little bit, even sort of build up their confidence, and then things are going to get a little hairy towards the end here. So now we need to find a map to use, and we're going to consult our big book of combat maps here. We do have some generic maps, but I don't necessarily want to use these, and I don't want it to be an open field situation, just because, again, that could really get out of control really quickly. So what I'm looking for here is, I think we've got some that have cave tunnels, and that's sort of what we want to use here. So again, some really nice maps in this book. I absolutely love this one. So we have one with a cave entrance, which we might use for one of the encounters, but then we just have some caves here and there. What do we have anymore? Okay, so we got a couple of different things with some caves. I kind of like this. Yeah, I like this one here. That could be like a final encounter sort of location. So we're just going to use this one map for the purposes of this adventure. Actually, no, because I got to take pictures of these. So yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, we got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 encounters total. And again, the players can do things like draw them out. So you could have All right, you know what? Let's use two maps. I'll just have to sort of hopefully remember where I put some of these. Actually, let me grab my dry erase marker here. So I'll mark where I'm putting some of the knolls. So again, we've got our plot hooks. We've got the players making their way to where the knolls are. They found that they sort of tracked them to this cave system where the knolls are going to be. We're going to use our archer knoll here, who will sort of be behind this rock. And we will put a couple more knolls sort of off to the side. So these knolls will be trying to use some degree of stealth and hopefully ambush the player characters as they make their way up. So this will be encounter number 1. And I think regular knolls actually have, don't they have a short bow or something available to them? Let me just take a look at the monster manual here. Okay, yeah, so the regular knolls all have longbows. Oops, that's the wrong stat block. So they have spears and longbows, so I'm going to be changing that to battle axe and a battle axe and longbows. But we'll have those 3 knolls there. So this will be map number 1. And again, they chose this cave. Everything's sort of wide open, so the players will have a tough time getting the drop on them. They'll have a tough time sneaking up. So I just want to mark the squares where the knolls are. So when I go to take pictures, I hate trying to do this right-handed. Okay, so now we know where the starting squares are going to be for that encounter. So we got the one encounter out of the way. And we could even have it so that like this area here can sort of line up with like this area over here. And then we're going to have our second batch of just standard knolls kind of be here, there, and there. And they can be sort of backup for this encounter here, so they can actually make their way out if you want them to. So we've got those ones. Then in here, we've got this large area. So this might be where the hyenas are, along with the pack lord. And then sort of guarding this area will be our 2 knolls, along with a fang, who will be guarding that area there. And that's just going to leave us with our final encounter. So we do have a situation where some of the fights will have like backup set up for them. So for example, the initial one outside where the cave entrance is, this pack of knolls will be close enough that they can provide assistance. These ones are going to stay put. However, if the players come around here, they can trigger this fight or this fight. So these 2 encounters can work sort of as support for one another if things get a little too dicey. In fact, let's just actually set the fang back just a little bit further, so it's more likely that the players will trigger this fight first before this one sort of takes place. And again, depending on how stealthy the players' characters have managed to be, you can have situations where the knolls are sort of caught a little bit unaware, or they're not fully prepared to jump into battle. But that leaves us with our final boss encounter, and this is where we're going to use 2 different books. So the first thing that we're going to have is a leader for the knolls. And for that, we're going to consult the Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. And in here, we are going to use I can find it here. Not the Froghemoth, although that would be awesome. Here we go. We are going to be using a Flind. And I actually do have the Flind miniature here. Now, these guys are pretty powerful. They are challenge rating 9, which, again, sounds like it's going to be, like, really, you know, over the top for the players. Again, players are fully able to engage in, like, hit and run tactics. They don't have to tackle each fight after fight after fight. They can, you know, attack an enemy of Knowles and then withdraw to sort of rest and recover and heal up. They can go back in. And you can always change around sort of the locations of where the Knowles are going to be. But again, we want this to be a tough fight. And 127 hit points does sound really tough for a group of 4th level characters. But again, you've got rogues with sneak attack. You have, I think, fighters get their 2nd attack around that time. You have action surge that the player or the character, you know, like a fighter type can do. You have paladins with their smite attacks. You've got, you know, again, your wizards, clerics, and all of those types of characters will have at least their cantrips, which are still powerful enough to deal damage. So this on its own would be a pretty tough fight. But again, we're going to make this a little bit more challenging. And it's up to you as the DM, obviously. You can sort of use this for a 5th level group of characters if you want. Or, again, also one thing to keep in mind is that in organized play for D&D, a standard party size can be anywhere from like 4 to 7 characters. With like 5 being sort of like the new average amount that is typically used at tables. So you're going to have, like, we've only got situations where most of these encounters are like 3 enemies at a time, and the backup shouldn't take place right away. Right, so if the fight outside is triggered, generally like a couple, like 2 to 3 rounds after the fight begins, that's when like these Knowles might get drawn in. And with this fight here, you know, it might be like couple rounds afterwards when these Knowles sort of make their way into the fight. So, you know, we definitely have a situation where, you know, it's not going to be like just 6 Knowles swarming the player characters all at once. So we got our Flind there, but we're not done yet, because like I said, we want this final encounter to be one that's memorable and one that's, you know, technically or very close to being like a deadly encounter. So the next thing that we're going to be including alongside of the Flind is going to be a Hellhound. So the Hellhounds are challenge rating 3. They have their Fire Breath, which is pretty nasty if it hits. Again, you're going to have characters that will have like the evasion ability by that level. I think, well, maybe not. But anyway, regardless, you're going to have like these types of this to back up the Flind. So yes, we're going to go with the Hellhound and the Flind. I don't know. I like Hellhounds as well. And it being sort of, again, like a dog type of creature, along with like the hyenas. This could always be like an abyssal hyena type of creature. But with the breath weapon, again, it's deadly potentially, but it's something that you have to roll to recharge every round. So I've had encounters with like creatures with breath weapons where they use a breath weapon in the opening round. And then if like the combat can go 4 or 5 rounds, and I never roll a 5 or 6, so they never get it back. So there's a little bit of you know, randomness to that. And again, this is meant to be like sort of a deadly encounter. And unlike the other fights here, the Flind and the Hellhound, they just sort of hang back, and they'll let the other ones sort of do the work for them. So they're not necessarily going to join any encounters. If this fight gets triggered, then these ones might join in, but on like round 5 or 6 or something like that. So it won't be immediate, but again, this is meant to be a very challenging scenario. And I think it's fair enough, because again, we got the group sort of reduced to the point where the player characters are, in most situations, they should be outnumbering the initial encounter almost on a 2-to-1. And if we look at like the hyena here, we'll take a look at its stat block. The regular gnolls, which account for the majority that they'll be going up against, they only have like 22 hit points. So, you know, 2 or 3, you know, solid attacks will be enough to sort of put them out. So I'm not, again, particularly worried about that. And again, if you want to make this for 5th level characters, then you certainly could. So I might say this for level range of characters levels, you know, 3 to 5. And you can sort of do whatever you wish with that. Let's just take a look at the hyena here and see what we got for their stats. So they only have 5 hit points each. So that's not going to be all that challenging of a fight in an armor class of 11. But still, we've got those particular encounters. So that is the most of the legwork done for this. Now it's just a matter of populating it with a little bit of treasure, as well as just writing up sort of the stat blocks and the or the area descriptions and the tactics. So I don't know. I enjoy doing these types of things. I think they can be a lot of fun. And again, with 5th edition D&D, the challenge ratings are really slanted in the player character's favor. So, you know, this fight being very, like, you know, a higher CR, like CR9 with a CR3 creature, sounds bad, and maybe it will be, but that's sort of the point. Like, it's meant to be an actual challenge. It's meant to feel like, you know, the climactic encounter for the situation. And I've run enough 5th edition to feel fairly confident that a group of 4th level characters, if this is the only encounters that they're having for this day, like they don't have random encounters on the way or anything like that, they have full resources when they begin, they have magic items that they've likely come across, they've got probably at least a few potions and scrolls at their disposal. They'll be able to, you know, make their way through this, and it will be tough, it will be challenging. A few characters might get knocked into unconsciousness. There is the potential that one of the player characters might even die and need to be raised or you know, brought back if possible. But that's, you know, part of the fun of D&D, at least in my opinion, is the challenge, right? And some of my most favorite 5th edition memories from games that I've run have had the players facing really tough encounters, and the players in my group at least have really responded well to fights that sort of come down to the wire. So hopefully this will be a sort of a fun exercise for everybody. Let's just adjust this a little bit so you can hopefully see a little bit better in frame here. But yeah, I had a lot of fun just sort of thinking of this, and I'm going to enjoy the write-up. If anybody's interested in the final product, I will be available if there's on my About tab on the channel page. There should be a thing that you can click on to say view email address. And if you click on that, you can send me an email and I can send you the PDF that I create for this scenario. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know if you have any suggestions for future little sidetrack short scenarios going forward. And I'll be more than happy to take a look at those and see what I can do with them. Anyway, thank you all again. It really means the world to me, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.